There are two main reasons I really appreciate meeting Canadian students. Do you know those two reasons? First is that they are coming from a country that speaks both French and English. That is bilingual. It's one of the rare countries in the world that in which people can understand French and English. I appreciate because I know my English is very mixed with French accent because I only shifted very recently from French to English. That's why I'm feeling confident when I'm talking to Canadians. So sometimes I will be putting French, and I guess it will not harm anyone. Is it? May I? Yes, but I will try English at each and every time. Second one is that at least I know your capital, Ottawa, where I've been like 3 or 4 times. So even in May, I tried to reach Rafi. I was at the University of Ottawa. Does anybody know? Oh, I came to your university. I was living at Stanton. Yeah, Stanton residence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is the second good reason actually I appreciate. At least I've been there and I appreciate your culture. Especially I was telling someone that in Canada, what is specific in Canada is that beside the economic development, you also develop the human, how can I say, humanity. There is a kind of social in the way the country is ruled, in the way the country is organized. There is a kind of social. I was lost. The reason why I'm telling you that is that I was lost at the international, Toronto International the long story. So someone helped me and I appreciate it. For those 2 reasons, you guys, I appreciate being with you this morning. Talking, discussing with you about a very complex and long topic on the history of Rwanda in general, but particularly the history of the 1994 genocide against Tutsi. I wonder if does anybody here, did anybody hear anywhere about this genocide? It does not mean having much information, no. This is the reason why we are meeting. Does anybody, did anybody meet any information about this genocide? From Romeo, shaking the hands of the people. Yeah, I found out that people knew this genocide about that book that was, I heard, more in Canada. So 1994, I think the best reason to start by the end and then to finish by the beginning. To start by the end, I mean by the genocide, 1994, then go back. Is it? Does it fit? Yeah, I think it's the best reason, it's the best way to make you understand. It does not mean that we are not reached the farthest period, but this is most of the time the best approach to use, especially when we are in front of non-Rwandans, in order for them to understand, dealing to help just to ask questions. So 1994, we experienced, as Rwandan society, we experienced genocide that took lives of more than 1 million of victims. So this genocide brought out more than 1 million victims and more than 1 million were perpetrated. Yeah, those are those who were judged by Gacaca jurisdiction. Gacaca, only those who were judged by traditional Gacaca jurisdictions. But if you do not know, you will know. I am sure you will know. And one of the right persons to indicate you about Gacaca will be Faustin, who will be discussing with you about this issue. And this will actually help you understanding even the culture of Rwanda and the mechanism, traditional mechanism of settling conflicts and even settling and handling genocide consequences. So besides these laws that shall never be replaced, but besides this mass participation, there are also some other characteristics or other consequences of this genocide. You understand, in a small country like this, actually, what if you can figure out this huge number of participation, both as being victims and as being perpetrators? Because the whole country was inhabited by 7 million. Yeah, 7 million of the population was less than 7 million. So, and even the trios are still continuing. You have, I think you know about the International Criminal Tribunal, one based in Arusha, is still trying fugitive of those fugitive who commit genocide. And even ordinary courts, ordinary tribunals are still trying people. So it means that this number will even go on. So some others will even died, or others are still hiding themselves somewhere. Because most of the time, families of Tutsi who were targeted by the genocide, most families were decimated to the extent that there is nobody to tell the story about what happened. I think that's the reason why is my English being honest. Most of the time there is a French accent, so you have to verify you guys that you understand everything. So here, actually, what I can tell you is that some families, I told you, some Tutsi families were decimated to the extent that even there is nobody to tell the story. I think this is the reason why late Alison DeFord, there is a US scholar and human activist called Alison DeFord. Anybody know her? Unfortunately, she passed away recently in an air crash near her home. She was living, I do not know if it was Atlanta to somewhere in California. Then she passed. She wrote a very interesting book named Leave No One to Tell the Story. Leave No One to Tell the Story. Genocide in Rwanda.
Can you write her name on the board as well?
You're saying?
Can you write her name as well?
Alison DeFord. Sorry, Alison DeFord. So what I can suggest is that if you want to, the book is even online. You can download it. I have the English version of this book. I could get from online sources. So you can even go online on Google and then have this. There is no need to buy it. It says it's online. It was London, 1999. But the French version was published in 1996. Do I need to write the French version also? Does somebody speak French? But you understand English?
Yeah.
Oh, En fait, pour ceux qui parlent français, ce qui est intéressant ici, c'est que, au fait, elle essaie de mettre en relief, elle essaie de mettre en évidence, au fait, la logique même du génocide. Aucun témoin ne doit survivre. Il ne devait y avoir aucun survivant. En fait, dans la mise en œuvre du génocide, ne doit survivre. Génocide au Rwanda. Londres, New York also, 1996. French it was 1996. So you guys, if you need a reference to know about the mechanism of execution of this genocide, I should advise you to read that important and huge. Otherwise, the other book of Romeo Dallaire was just to show the immediate period that preceded the genocide. So the execution of the genocide, you can refer to that book in order to have as much as information you can have on this genocide. So, given this mass participation during genocide, you can see that the genocide was actually involving at least almost no, it was the half of the population. The half of the population of Rwanda were involved in genocide, either as being killed, either as being perpetrators, either as being rescuers, as for sure Bismarck, I don't know, Faustin will tell you, some few people tried rescuing some victims. That's the reason why actually we still have, this is one of the reasons why we still have some few survivors. You can understand, in each and every case of genocide, there are actually some rescuers. They can be a little number, you know, those kind of people that are hidden somewhere in the society, but there are the rescuers. This is a logic that you are accustomed to. Am I right? I'm right, please? Yeah, even in the Holocaust, there were some few people in different countries that could try, that could attempt rescuing some victims. So in Sweden, for example, you know what the ambassador of Sweden did? Ambassador of Sweden? Yeah. It was actually a small number of people that could make some extraordinary human actions. And actually, around half of the population were involved in genocide. So this shows actually some of the characteristics of this genocide that we can highlight like this. Mass participation. Mass participation also, I do not know if we can say rapidness or fastness, I do not know. But in French, yeah.
In English is
To
rapidity.
be so quick, it was executed within a period of less than 3 months, less than 100 days. So you understand, it's the fastest genocide that has occurred across the world. If you consider some other cases of genocide which last more than 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, so this one has lasted more than less than 100 days. So this is one aspect actually to which we will be coming back when we are going to explain some of the factors, some of the contextual elements that justify or that facilitate this mass participation. So in mass participation, I've been highlighting this issue. Rapidness, less than 100 days. April, July, April 6, July, beginning July 1994. So the other characteristic is that this genocide was characterized by extreme forms of violence. Here, understand me well, understand me in a proper way. It does not mean that we want to show that this genocide has brought out atrocities that have not been experienced during other genocide. No, it does not mean that we are hierarching sufferings. You understand me? No. No, each and every suffering is a suffering in itself. You understand what I mean? It's a suffering in itself. And here, we cannot tell to students, we cannot tell as human beings that this suffering was little compared to this one. No, we are just showing how this suffering was organized, how this suffering consisted in. Do you understand what I'm meaning? Yeah, that's good. There were some forms of atrocity, how can I say? Did you know about rape, extensive rape, or systematically, or each and every Tutsi woman and girl were raped before being killed? So rape, it does mean that, it means that more than, I wonder if you can understand, more than 10, 11, 12 killers. You know, 11 genocide perpetrators raping one lady and then kill her after then enforcing some sticks or some hard materials in her genital organs. Do I translate well from French to English? Yeah, because most of the time that kind of suffering is difficult to explain it in English. Because it was spreading the hate propaganda in French, most of the time in French is where we are able to translate what a little bit would happen. So there were different, you know, this will be actually one of the specific characteristics, the one that I'm going to highlight, and that is that is also referring to that one, is that victims and perpetrators were living on the same hills. It was not like in the Holocaust, for example, some Jews were most of the time living in some specific areas that we negatively called ghettos, where they were living alone, they were not actually, most of them were not living with the Nazi Germans, no. And in other information, some Jews, most Jews were living in other countries than Germany. For example, in Poland. In Poland, this is where there was a huge number, even in the Eastern country, there was Ukrainian, Poland, and former USSR, Soviet Union, this is where they were a huge number of Jews comparing to Western Europe. Yeah, so Nazi Germans, when they were capturing, transporting, deporting Jews, most of the time they didn't even know them. They were just using some indications made by the local population. Do you understand what I'm meaning? To the extent that some perpetrators did not know their victims, and some victims did not know their perpetrators. Do you get what I'm meaning? So for this genocide, it was not the same thing. No? Victims were living with perpetrators in the same way, most of the time even with some traditional, the same culture, the same language. It was not there was no difference between the language, the culture, everything was like shared. And for a long time, for a huge number of years. So this is how actually this genocide is somehow complicated, even somehow complex when we are telling about it to some people coming from abroad. It's somehow difficult. It's because these guys who killed people knew them, and those who knew their victims. When we are collecting some testimonies, at a certain moment they should come. I was 15 during that period. I was 15. I was in secondary school. I could see everything. So you could have someone and ask, you X also, are you doing this to me? So no, I'm not the one. I'm going to show you how being Tutsi is like. I'm going to show. Then he cut him. He cut the legs. He cut the neck. He cut everything. So those proximity, those atrocities of proximity actually highlight another characteristic of this genocide. It was actually executed with proximity, what we in English call proximity. Does it make sense? The proximity in the sense that victims and perpetrators were living together, knew each other, and forms of violence were very extreme forms. I think you may know, coming back on this characteristic, I think you may have met somewhere that most victims, most Holocaust victims, Jews, were either guests, were actually killed in guest chamber. Others were shot, others were died for hunger while during the deportation. So there are some mechanisms you may be aware of that in which Jews were executed. So this time, this genocide has known more than 17 forms of violence. Including those forms of violence, the very cruel ones were rape. Rape was not intending to have sex like you can imagine. No, actually it was to destroy genital organs of these ladies. So there was a kind of myth that I'm going to highlight in the hate propaganda that preceded this genocide, that actually was pushing Hutu people to rape and then to destroy every kind of anything that could resemble, that could make sense, that could refer to everything that was characterizing life of Tutsi. So the reason why I think Alison Defoe wrote this book and called it like that, she even tried to explain, it's that in the while perpetrators made every effort to kill all the victims, they also made every effort to make them suffer before and after being killed. So before most women experience this systematic, the reason why it was systematic and very massive and even very intensive, used extensively or intensively to each, systematically to each women and ladies, but also using some harmful materials like stick, like arrows, after raping them, they could let some arrows in their genital organs and then go. You know, some victims we are burying now, we are finding some, we find most these objects in their genital organs. So you understand that kind of making human being suffer and suffer to the extreme level. So apart of this systematic, I think you are aware that even do you know about the UN, the 1948 UN Convention? Yeah, yes, that's good, you know. You may be aware that it highlights 5 acts constituting the crime of genocide. Are you aware? Killing members of the group, transferring, you know, putting them on harsh living conditions. So International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, ICTR, I was referring to, made this act the sixth act of the constituting the crime of genocide. In 1998, it said that the trio chamber said no, rape should be defined as itself as an act constituting the crime of genocide, as it was like other acts aimed at destroying in whole or in part members of the Tutsi ethnic group. So apart from rape, there was also harsh cuts of genital organs from men, especially, and then you know, cutting legs and arms and legs, and then let the victim agonizing somewhere for some days, even some week, you know, harsh words to, you know, mockery when you are applying sadism, you know, sadism. Yeah, seeing someone, trying to cut the legs, the arms, the legs, you know, other parts, and then waiting for what he's saying, waiting for crying, waiting for, you know, just making him suffer. These acts actually were extensively used, and also burns and even burying people alive. To just bury this part and then trying you came when I was still collecting some testimonies in the southern and eastern part. We are in a big project recommended by this commission at the National University of Rwanda. We are collecting testimonies from genocide survivors. So all those extreme forms of violence I'm referring to, they are those I asked, those I assisted, I watched myself, and those I asked some survivors who actually testified about what they witnessed. So most people, some people were burned alive. The perpetrators could burn this part, and then they let the head, yes, and then the perpetrator could come and beat the head, beat here, until the person could, you know, without not being able to, you know, to escape. So it was to some extent very harsh to experience, or very harsh even to listen to. So there were some other mechanism of making people suffer, but I think there are 2 texts, 2 small papers. You can just have one copy, and then you will make a photocopy of them to know about the hate propaganda that led to genocide, but also to these atrocities, or to these mechanisms that accompany the execution of genocide. Are we still together? So those are the characteristics. The other characteristic actually is the international community. International community was involved in many, in many aspects. International community involved. For example, your country, for example, Canada. No, unfortunately, I'm beginning by your country. No, let's be back on it at the last position. So there were some countries that were involved here in Rwanda, like France and Belgium. France was the most country involved here in this country. Then France was actually supporting the existing government. I'm sure those who read the book of Romeo that they found this characteristic, this close relationship between the existing government and then the French government. Even Romeo is trying to show most details some people do not even know, trying to highlight how French was involved in forbidding United Nations Security Council to know about the real situation in Rwanda, but also in helping in training militia, killing militia, in helping the army, the national army, the governmental army, that could be help in committing genocide. Actually, French, or even to give the what we call financial assistance via Egypt to come and give financial assistance to genocidal forces. So the people who are interested in learning about that involvement of French can read that book. That book highlights all those aspects, the French involvement. But also, yes, please.
Did you write down the title?
Has shaken the hands of the people.
Oh, okay.
Romeo David. The name, I guess the name is David.
Yeah.
Romeo David. Yeah. Shaking in French, in English is shaking the hands. Yeah, I think there were many issues, many editions. I think the most important one will be this one, 2004. But there were many editions. But the title is that one. And in most libraries in Canada, you can have it. Yeah, day execution, day by day of genocide, you can have most information. This is what I liked in that book, is that it's very detailed. It does not hide any information about what was happening. So, but there was also French also. Like in May, beginning June, end May, in June, French sent even a military mission called the Operation Turquoise in the southern part of the country. So the objective of this mission was actually to stop the RPF forces or Rwandese Patriotic Front, as we are going to be back on. A rebel movement that was fighting the government, that actually was, beside fighting the government, was also contributing to the stopping of the genocide. Because by the time it took power, it defeated the government forces, it's the same time that the genocide actually stopped. I think it's even the one that was making international alarms about what was happening, taking some pictures and even trying to show information. I think it's the reason why to a certain extent the international community even intervened. It's that the reports that were sent by Romeo were actually corroborating those that were sent by this movement that was fighting the government. So most information are highlighted in this small document that but unfortunately it's in French, but the other one for the genocide execution will be in English. It's in English actually, so this French one can be taken by one. The guy that is speaking French. So you will have some copy, but for the genocide execution and what I'm going to talk about, in some instances will be in English. It's an English written paper. So the international community were involved in different manners. Those soldiers sent by French government actually participated themselves in the genocide in the southwestern parts of the country, like in the Congo. You will have some testimony. There is even a report that was made on French involvement. On French involvement, the report called Report M2U00738. Yeah, from the name of the secretary, the secretary of this commission, who was the one actually who was presiding this report, that highlights French evidences of French involvement in the 1994 genocide. So this report we can get copy from it. It's online actually. Rapport mucho, but in French, in French, the report is, you can read rapport sur les preuves de l'implication de l'État français dans le génocide en 1994. That report was released in 2007. So Belgium also, it will be involved, especially like you are going to see in a very little way. It was not involved in the commission of genocide research, because even Belgium itself was a victim, because some of the blue helmets from Belgium were even killed during genocide, because genocidal forces were even classifying Belgian troops as on the side of Tutsi, and especially as on the side of RPF that was fighting the government. So they were not involved in that way in the commission of genocide, but in the context, or in the as we are going to see in introduction of ethnic mentions that were highlighted, that were recuperated by the post-colonial Rwandan regime to contribute to the execution of the genocide here in Rwanda. Well, otherwise, the United States, well, it was just for not getting information, not trying to interpret information. You can read on this way. You can read Linda Melvin. She's a British investigative journalist. So she has produced a huge work actually on. Do you appreciate these? These references? Do you need them? Mm-hmm. Linda Melvin. Linda Melvin. A pupil betrayed. Genocide in Rwanda. No, the rule of the West in Rwanda's genocide. Yeah, the book is very interesting in highlighting this involvement of the national committee, showing how French was sending traditional arms to genocidal forces, how French was passing via Egypt, how in Belgian government was actually, how Belgian government was trying to alarm, to warn the World Security Council, how General Dare was trying to alarm or to warn the international community about the genocide that was being organized, that was being prepared against Tutsi, how actually the West took a kind of indifference against those who were being killed, against the victims. Each and everything related to international involvement, you can find it in this book, Linda Melvin, People Betray. I think you can get many copies even from here in Rwanda, you can get them and give it outside. Outside, especially in Europe or in the US or in the Canada. Even in the Canada, you can have this book. So, given all those characteristics, what I can tell you is that there were some people, there were some people who advanced many theories, who tried to suggest many theories, who tried to say, no, but because the unique question you can ask me, that I can ask you, that age, and everybody can ask, is that how this happened in a country that in which people used to share the same culture, the same territory, the same language, and they live the same life, the same past, you know. This is the common, the general question you can ask me. Even if I can give you a time to ask me a question, I think it's one of the questions you may ask me. So that's the reason why I told you we should start by there and then go back to the history. So there were some guys, I'm not the one to explain, to give some explanation about what happened. There were some scholars, practitioners who tried from abroad or from here in Rwanda, who tried to give many explanations to this genocide. Allow me to categorize, to classify the explanations in six categories. To put the explanations, I mean from the books I have read, you know, both from Canada, from US, from France, from Belgium, and even from here in Rwanda. So explanations are in the 6 categories. First category is dominated by what we can call a naturalist explanation. Naturalist, does it mean something? Yeah, naturalist. The naturalist explainer or scholars or school, the naturalist school is dominated by French and Belgian scholars. French and Belgian scholars, if I can give an example, we can hide one professor who even taught here in Rwanda before genocide, Pierre Lermy. Clé pour comprendre. Vocabulaire d'un peuple. Yeah, keys to understand the calvary of a people. You understand? Yeah, this is how actually if we can say like that, he's the one to suggest this scholarship, this what we in French call grille d'explication, this kind of explanation that I'm going to highlight. He tried to say that no, the reason why genocide happened here in Rwanda is you know that there are theories of explanation about phenomena like this one. You know. There are many theories. So theories about this genocide, they are the ones I'm going to sum up with you. So Pierre Lermy and some other guys, some other scholars from Belgium, like Claudine Vidal. You do not know. I'm sure you do not know those scholars from Belgium or from France, especially who write in French. But they were the one to propose that naturalist explanation, saying that the reason why there was genocide here in Rwanda is that people have been living for a long time in hate and in conflict, to the extent that there were conflict, retribution, to the extent that at a certain moment the retributions reached the culminating point. That was genocide actually. And said that the genocide can be included in the traditional, in the naturalist hate between Tutsi and Hutu since the beginning of the time. Yeah, in his book, he tries to show that the culture of those two guys were very different, where they were coming from different areas. So they were having different objectives, to the extent that they have not had any time of peace until they were bringing themselves to genocide. That unfortunately was decimating the Tutsi ethnic group. Now, this is how I can sum up his book that I read. I read most parts of the book. No, this is the simplistic reasoning he produced. So, but as you can highlight, so you know that there is I wonder if it's a quality of default for scholars. I cannot say that the book is totally to reject, no. No, as a scholar, I cannot tell you that, no. That's the reason why I'm mentioning, no, it's a source of information. You understand what I'm meaning? So despite the focus put on culture, trying to show us how the society trying to evolve, even if the book does omit many historical and cultural elements, but it's trying to show us how human beings are characterized by conflicts. And even if it does not put the conflict in their traditional pre-colonial conflict in their contextual fact, the book actually tries to allow us to understand how people think about violence, about some extreme forms of violence. There are many information we can use, bad and good, but sometimes we even need bad information to know about good information. Does it make sense? Yeah, it does not mean that you will not read the book. No, please do read it in order to understand how people can even disinform other people. That's why I mentioned factualism. You understand what I mean? Because I thought you were students, so we could discuss, in a very academic way. Does it fit in? Yeah, not in a political one, this is not, this is not my mission. I thought we should discuss in an academic way, asking questions. So the second, there are two limitations from this scholarship. One is that it explains things in a teleological way. In a teleological way is that you think because there were conflicts in this period, pre-colonial period, and then colonial period, conflicts were activated by colonial masters. After colonization, conflicts were activated and crystallized by post-colonial regime, so there should not be anything else than genocide. It's just to explain what happened by taking this line. I think that's the reason why I avoided trying, before Rwanda was this, and this, the colonial Rwanda was this, colonial was this, post-colonial, until we arrived to genocide. I avoid that way of explaining things actually. We actually ask things when they are in front of us, and then we go back to the origin. I think the first limitation is that he tries to understand things by putting his analysis in the past without making differences of the context and trying to show the contextual factors that explain the genocide in 1994. The second one is that the book omits that there are some other societies that know ethnicity but which did not fall genocide. Belgium, for example, they know actually traditional cultural hate between Flemish and Wallons. But they did not commit genocide. I think they won't commit genocide. I want it to be different unless there is a government like Nazi German, Nazi, that can come and crystallize the distinction, the differences. Yes, please.
They did have wars with each other, but there wasn't genocide. Like the Williams and the Flemings, they did fight each other.
Yeah, it can happen, but not genocide. I wonder if you even follow the recent information that shows us that it was difficult for them to even find a government. A government opinion 2 years. This shows a traditional conflict between two groups of people, but it cannot lead to genocide. Most of it, we need something else to crystallize the traditional conflict in order to reach the genocide. We actually hate among people to conduct or to lead to genocide needs to be rationalized. I'm finding the word needs to be rationalized and crystallized to the extent that it separates the two groups of people and then leads to genocide. So the second explanation, the second group, the second school tries to correct the first one by focusing this time not on the culture but on the context. The second one is also dominated, I'm sorry, by French and Belgian scholars like Philippe Legends. He's a Flemish. Yeah, he also taught law in this country before genocide. He was lecturing. This one was lecturing in history at the National University.
If the other school was called the Naturalist School, what's this school called?
Yes, please. It's a good question. I'm going to answer. The second one is the structuralist school, economist and all structuralist, approach structuralist. For those who speak French, approach structuralist to approach economist. So the structuralist approach or the economist approach, to a certain extent, tries to show that the reason why genocide happened is that there were some social and economic difficulties that the regime, the political regime, could not overcome in any way than committing genocide. So committing the commission of genocide is included in the perspective of ending the economic and social crisis that were there. Because I'm continuing to sum up what the school is saying, because even in some other periods, governments, when they are facing crisis, they are obliged, or their trends are to commit genocide. Trying even to show the example of the Nazi German, that it's called, Hitler wanted to evacuate Jews, to evacuate them from where to where. And then after, when he was, when he took France, when he annexed Austria, and he was sure he would move Jews to another position, to another place, so that alliance. No, people are not seeing that they are justifying what Hitler has done. No? And then, he would like to put them there. But when the Soviet Union resists, and England, United Kingdom resists to his attacks, so he commences to have an imminence of the military defeat. So killing Jews since 1942, 41, 42, 44, it's included in the strategy of Nazi Germany to kill them in order to bring the Allied forces to cease fire, or it was just killing Jews was like a strategy of war. You understand what they are meaning? Because let me come back on these scholars. Maybe you will have some questions. We will have a kind of discussion to discuss about this school, because they are the most important. Otherwise, other stories that I can bring you without showing you what is written, how things are discussed, I think it won't be interesting for you, I know. Because other stories you can read them in most books, but this one to show how things are being discussed, I think is the most important. So they try to show that there were 4 important crises. Social crisis, there was disaster since 1986. 1986, 1987. There was disaster, a human disaster, especially in the southern parts of the country, where there was dry seasons and bad crops. And internationally, there was the decrease of prices of coffee and tea that were the main products exported by Rwanda. You know how international trade is organized. There are those who buy that fix the price, and we bring coffee and tea somewhere in London, some guy from Canada, you come and they Canada cannot come and buy coffee and direct to Canada. You need to take, you know how the commerce is organized, you know. But the price, you know how this what we in French call économie de trade. Économie de trade. That's English. That's kind of fixing the price by the buy, those countries who buy for our products coming from Africa, and then fixing the same price, this time it's a low price, and then fixing a higher price when it comes to final products coming from Europe or from America to here. How do they call it économie de trade in French? English has économie de trade. Tu vois la manière là de exporter les produits, il arrive quelque part, on fixe les prix. Ce n'est pas le producteur qui fixe, c'est l'acheteur. Ensuite, l'acheteur transforme les matières premières. Il exporte lui aussi les produits finis. Il fixe également le prix, cette fois-ci un prix exorbitant pour les acheteurs africains. On appelle ça économie de trade. C'est ça la dispartement on l'appelle. Mais that will not constitute in itself an obstacle to our explanation. The explanation from that scholarship is that there was that disaster, there was that hunger, there was that decrease of price, coffee price. What makes the population being poor, getting poor, but also there was international mechanism, you know what we call programme d'ajustement structurel, structural adjustment program from international